Hello, everybody. I'm going to speak about the WordPress Customizer. My name is Thad Allender. I'm from a very small town of Kansas that I guarantee nobody has ever heard of, so I won't even name it.
It's so small.
Is it?
It's so tiny.
Sorry. Is it really?
It's a town name. It's so tiny. I can't see the town name.
Oh, it's not on there. Very, very clever. I was a director of photography, so my background is in photography. I moved to DC and was a multimedia producer for USA Today. At the same time, I founded Graph Paper Press, which is a WordPress theme company, and we make kind of minimalist stuff for photographers in the creative community. We just launched a new thing called ThemeWorks, and but today I'm going to kind of use what I've learned over the last few years and talk about the Customizer and why it's pretty awesome, and I hope that everybody starts to use it. So how many people started building static websites like as their first foray into the web? Okay, so as we know, like static websites, they suck, right? They're horrible to update. They take a really long time to change, like navigation links and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, some smart people got together and started making dynamic websites. First it was, you had Perl websites, and who used movable type back in the day? So okay, so me and you, we started on movable type, and because they were dynamic it was a dynamic website. And all of a sudden my website froze one day, so I started exploring other options, and some of my friends were into Python, and they said, hey, you should check out this new thing called WordPress. And so there was a big mass migration to WordPress in 2004, 2005. And everybody started loving WordPress, right? Well, as websites became dynamic, people wanted to make all aspects of the site dynamic. They wanted to make their logo easy to update, and they wanted to make fonts easy to change. So all these developers started rolling their own code and making these huge, overly verbose, nasty theme option pages, right? Who all has either rolled their own theme option page or has used one that looks nothing like the WordPress admin interface? Okay, so a couple of us. Let's take a look at what they look like. So this is an admin interface for a theme option panel that's crammed into WordPress, right? And this is probably what some of us remember, or some of us might even use in some of our themes. And it's bad, right? It's like an admin panel inside of an admin panel. Here's another one. So we've got, DB business line options, and just a bunch of text, and it's a proprietary theme option page that a developer built because there was no kind of consistent way to roll theme options into WordPress. And this last one is my favorite, right? It's don't panic. Well, if there's anything that says don't panic, or says panic, it's don't panic, right? And it's right on the very first page that you land to start changing elements of your theme design. So all this stuff is really bad, right? It's kind of like Inception. It's like you're in a website that's making changes to you're making changes to your theme on a theme options page that's changing the front end of your website. It's very difficult to understand, and there are many different layers of admin panels that make the whole process of updating your website confusing. So a theme that builds other themes is kind of bad, right? So it all had to stop. And it all stops with the Customizer. The Customizer is a new thing. Who has used the theme Customizer in WordPress? Quick show of hands. Okay, 10-20%, I would say. So Customizer kind of hits on a core principle that's true in a lot of things related to code, and that's true in just the real world itself. And that's why reinvent the wheel. Mark Twain said, there's no such thing as a new idea. And that's very true. So instead of rolling all these new proprietary theme options page, let's just make one thing and have all theme developers use the same approach. So there's no such thing as a new idea. It's impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a new sort of mental kaleidoscope, he said. We give them a turn, and they make new and curious combinations. We keep on turning and making new combinations indefinitely, but they are the same old pieces of colored glass they have been using through all the ages. So Mark Twain said that. So around 2012, Daryl Cooper Smith, really smart developer, and a couple other core developers started working on this consistent customizer API. Developers like me, we're very eager because all the themes that we make, we wanted to have a consistent user experience. And we didn't want to rebrand the WordPress admin interface to make it a confusing experience for users and developers. So the customizer is a couple things. It's an API. It's a set of standards that developers can build customized theme options and add to WordPress. It sanitizes your data, so there's lower risk of like security vulnerabilities that Steve was just talking about. It's extensible, so you can add to it if you'd like. And the best thing, it's really easy to build on top of, it's really easy to integrate into themes, and it's incredibly easy to use. So this little customize link, if your theme supports this, you'll have this little customize link underneath appearance inside WordPress. And once you click on that, depending on the options that your theme supports, you'll have a lot or a few options show up, and this is the customizer, okay? So on the left, we have on the right, we have a live preview of your website, and on the left, we have all the options that are available within this theme that control the design aspects of your website. So I guess before we even go into showing kind of code examples and how to actually get this stuff working, if you're going to build a theme, I think we should all step back and ask ourselves, should we even do this, right? Because as you know, as Steve was just saying, every line of code is a liability. Every line of code that's on your website is a potential, has a potential for a security vulnerability. So our goal should be to write as few lines of code and manage as few lines of code on our website as possible. So there's a saying that we should keep it simple, stupid. KISS is the acronym. So awareness of long-term implications of verbose and lots of code goes a long way, as well as knowing when you can hard code things into your website, and it'll save you a mass amount of code overhead. So here are reasons why I think you should integrate with the customizer. If you're going to release public themes, who has released a public theme? A theme for public download, so 2. If you're making client themes, if you're going to have consistent changes to your website, such as like a slideshow at the top of your website, it probably makes sense to not just go into code and cowboy code some approach. It probably makes sense to integrate some sort of programmatic approach into your theme and to integrate with the customizer. Or if you have an undefined scope for a project that you're working on, the client really hasn't been able to pinpoint exactly what they want, and you're kind of left guessing, and because you're left guessing, you give them options, right? And here's some reasons why you shouldn't. On your personal theme, there's really no reason that you should integrate the customizer on your own personal theme. You can hard code that stuff. It's probably easier to integrate. There's also a no argument for client themes. You could have a relationship with a client that is, they come to you when they want changes done on your site because you control code quality and you don't want them kind of tweaking things. If the site that you're building really doesn't require any changes, there's no need for the customizer. And if you have a very clear scope and everything is buttoned down, there's no reason to integrate the customizer. So there are 4 basic building blocks for using the customizer in a theme or project that you're working on. The first one is panels. Second one is sections. Then settings and controls. So panels, what you're looking at here on the left are 6 different panels. There's a general panel, typography panel, colors, header, sections, and widgets. You can see that it's a panel because the arrow is on the right. It's going to actually contain sections. So a panel contains sections. And this is what sections look like. Sections have a drop-down arrow. And you can click the arrow, and it will show you settings. So sections contain settings. And the settings are the things that you interact with on your website. Let's say that you want to change your site description on the site you're just getting ready to launch. You go to the customizer. If your theme supports it, you change your byline. You can also, depending on the number of options that your theme supports, you can also add logo, all these other things, and it's all theme dependent, right? So settings each have a control. So a setting is like, if we go back to the previous slide, a setting would be your site title, right? Well, we're going to define what that site title field actually does. We're going to tell site title that it's actually a text area or a text field, and that's what a setting does, or that's what a control field does. So your controls are the individual fields that control the setting. So another way to think about controls are the buttons and fields that you interact with in the customizer. A control might be a text box, a radio button, a color wheel, an upload field, or an image slider. Let me stop real quick. Any questions so far? Yeah? So there are 4 building blocks. There are sections, or excuse me, there are panels, sections, settings, and controls. Okay? So let's review, right? Panels contain sections, sections contain settings. Each setting has a control. So if you're going to build a theme with the customizer, remember those 3 things. All right, so let's get to work. Let's actually let's add a welcome message to the top of your site, right? Let's say you want this to be dynamic. You want it to change every once in a while. So in order to do this, you need to open up either your theme's functions.php file, or you can, if you're a more advanced user, you could create a functionality plugin. But let's just keep it simple, and let's open up your functions.php file. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to, you can pretty much just copy and paste this line of code if you'd like. But the big piece of this, well, there's 2 big pieces of this actually. Who here has ever written an action hook or action filter? So quite a few. So if you're familiar with this is going to be like everyday stuff. But basically, this customized register is the important bit, as well as up top in the function up top, the WP customize. That's an object that contains all the functionality for the theme customizer that we're going to interact with. And so our function is merely hooking into WordPress core, and we're going to start writing stuff and adding lines of code inside this function that creates that welcome message on the theme customizer page. So we've kind of built out this let's take a look again at this real quick. So we've built out this kind of empty function, right? This function that yeah, go ahead. Functions.php, your theme, open up your theme folder. Don't do this on a live production site. Do this on a local development site. And it needs to be inside the opening and closing PHP brackets. It looks like a angle question mark PHP. Make sure it's inside those. So this is kind of like the container that we're going to work within. So we've got this container. Now let's actually add a panel. So this little WP Customize, you can see up at the top of the function, we've passed in WP Customize into this function. And so WP Customize add panel, that's a method of this WP Customize function. And all this other stuff, we first have an ID, and then we pass it an array of parameters. And this essentially does nothing, right? We've created a panel, but that panel has nothing in it, okay? So we've given it a title, we've given it a unique ID, and we've given it a priority. So we're going to add a section now to that panel that we just created. So we've kept the code at the top. This is the same function. We're just adding stuff in the middle of this function, right? So below this, we've got add section. We've got a unique identifier for the section that we're going to add. We've got the same kind of syntax. So it's really important when you're learning code to like study the patterns. It's really, coding is all about like pattern recognition. So if you kind of study the variances between the two, you'll start to understand the differences. So we've got a title that we're passing in. We've got the same priority, and we're assigning this panel, or excuse me, we're assigning this section to that panel ID up top. Okay. So we've got our panel, we've got our section. Now we need to add a setting, and we need to add a form or a control. But actually, let's kind of stop real quick and let's learn a very basic PHP principle that will serve you well over the long term, and that's this dry principle. It simply means do not repeat yourself. And if you look at the previous code, there's a little bit of repetition here, right? So let's say that I accidentally misspelled my general panel in one of these arrays that I'm building, or one of these arrays that I'm building. Well, if I misspell that, then the whole thing's gonna break, right? So we should really try to consolidate that and put that and assign that as a variable. So if we kind of remember what the dry principle says, don't repeat yourself. Let's assign it as a variable. Let's just call it general panel equals my general panel, and let's put it at the very top, right? And then we can just substitute all that hard-coded kind of ID reference and make it a dynamic variable. So fewer places that we need to change equals fewer potential bugs. All right, so now let's add a setting. And I've removed all the rest of the code just to keep it really easy to look at. But a setting is really simple. You essentially give it a unique ID up at the top, add setting, welcome message, and pass in an array of arguments. And the default parameter or argument is simply that's your default text that's going to show up in case the user they've just visited the customizer for the first time. That's the text that's going to be saved in the text box, right? Okay, so we've got a section, or we've got a panel, we've got a section, we've got a setting inside that panel, and now we need to actually tell WordPress what kind of form control, what kind of controller do we want to make this form field have. So adding controls, right? So the add control method requires an ID. Here we're calling it welcome control, or welcome message control. The same syntax. We pass it in an array of arguments. We give it a label, call it message. We tell it what section we're going to. We tell it what setting we're going to, and the type parameter, or the type argument, that's telling WordPress that this is going to be a text area, right? So when you go to the customizer and you click on customize, now you're going to have a field that shows up inside this very specific panel, inside the section, and it's going to be a text area, right? And that's really pretty much all there is to it. So we've added control types. We've added all four. We've added a section, panel, setting, and controller. So there are six default field types supported by the customizer. All the ones on the left: text, checkbox, radio buttons, select, drop-down pages, and a text area, right? But there's even more control types that you can add. And this is where WordPress really takes off. And this is where developers have a lot of fun, right? The syntax changed just a little bit in comparison to the previous stuff. But for now, let's just keep it really simple. You can add a color wheel to the WordPress Customizer. And you have to interact with this class, this WP Customize Color Control. You can add an upload field. You can add an image field that allows a user to select one image. You can integrate the background image functionality that usually exists kind of underneath appearance backgrounds. You can actually move that functionality into the customizer if you interact with this. You can also move the header functionality into the customizer. And like a good salesman, there's more. So those are the things that you can extend from within WordPress core. But let's say that you wanted to add like slides, right? Like you have a client or maybe your website that we were talking about before. You wanted to have kind of a dynamic slideshow at the top, but it wouldn't make sense to go into your theme every time and like hard code in like a slideshow image, so you want it to be dynamic. So this is something that we made, and you can add slideshow controls. I won't really go into the code for that. If you're interested in it, I can give you a GitHub link, and it's all public, and you can take a look. So you've got your options saved in the WordPress database, right? But how do you actually show that stuff on the front end of your website? This function, this is a PHP function, and it's just called getThemeMod. And this is the function that's going to take the name of the setting that we wrote before. It won't look like name. These are placeholders, right? The name variable. You just want to, it'll be a single quote, and then whatever the name of the setting is. We called ours welcome_message. And then if you want to give it a default value that shows up on the front end of your website if the setting is not set, then you would pass in an additional text value there. And you do PHP getThemeMod, welcome message, and bam, then your welcome message shows up on the front end of your website. In your template, yep. In your template. And you've just integrated with the WordPress Customizer. So that's pretty much all there is in terms of how to move one of your themes in the customizer. Yeah?
Sanitization.
Excuse me?
Sanitize.
Yep, sanitize. Okay, so WordPress core handles sanitization of like the core customizer functionality. If you're going to extend the customizer, and let's say you want to add like what we did, slideshows. Yeah, if you want to.
Random like headers, like if you have like 6 or 7.
Yeah. Okay. So let's chat about that afterwards, because it can get really complicated. Data sanitization is really key, and that's another huge benefit to using the customizer, because you outsource all of that to really smart developers that made WordPress, right? So should you do this? Should you extend the customizer if you're capable of? And I think this is kind of be for you, I guess. If it enhances the user experience of the theme that you're making, then you should definitely integrate with the customizer, right? Like the randomized header images, that makes a lot of sense to kind of integrate. And if you're willing to make a commitment to maintaining the code that you write. Know if it somehow makes a confusing user experience, or if it might be handled better through something like integrating with custom post types. If you want to learn more about this stuff, you could visit, these are all links, and I'll give you a link to this slideshare at the end. But the Codex has a great tutorial on how to do this stuff. Otto, he's a core committer. He has a nice tutorial on this as well. There's actually a framework that is become quite popular. I'd probably suggest you don't rely on a framework for this because it's relatively easy. But there's this thing called Kirky that actually extends many different field types, just not text and the 6 that we talked about, but I think there's something like date pickers and all kinds of silly stuff. I posted a link to the GitHub repository that has the example code that we're using on our ThemeWorks platform for all this stuff, for slides. And then, yeah, if you don't really want to do any of that stuff, you can check out something like any of the links up there. This is me. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. There's my Twitter deal, my email address, and then some website links. And I bet nobody can read that, so it's just SlideShare / Thad Allender, my name, and then WordPress Customizer. And that's it.
Can you go back to the 2 slides?
Sure. Maybe. 2 slides?
Oh, back, no, forward. That one.
Okay.
Pause now, right, okay.
And the one before that? Oh, yeah. For sure. Any questions? Yeah.
WordPress requires.
Excuse me?
WordPress.org requires.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually why Steve had me come here and talk. Or I think what kind of raised the idea was if you're going to submit a theme to WordPress.org, they now require that your theme, if you have options, they require that there is no theme option panel, right? And that it integrates with the customizer. The good news is like if you are writing custom theme option panels, you can definitely integrate with the customizer because the customizer is super simple. So yeah, but if you release a theme on WordPress.org, it has to integrate optionally with the customizer. Yeah.
What's the GitHub repo for the slide example?
It's on the actual slides. Do you want the link?
I'm trying clicking on the slideshow thing.
Oh yeah.
I can't get it.
Huh. It's just go to GitHub and then /graph paper press, and it's the repository that's called GPP theme
Customizer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now a warning. That is merely an example that we pulled from ThemeWorks, and I've not tested any of the functionality outside the dependencies of that theme. So I don't think it's going to work. Yeah, I wanted to put it up there so you could kind of take a look at how we did the slides and stuff like that. Yeah.
Does the customizer work with like video, like creating like you want to create a panel or a section?
It can do anything. So
if I want to stream, like create a panel that allows me to plug in RTPs to stream.
yeah, let me show you what. Let me kind of. Let's see. This is really hard to. Can't tell if it's there. Yeah. Okay. So. This is a really rudimentary example, but you can see that can't really see any of this stuff. I thought that this had an example with video, but I don't think it does. But yeah, I mean, you can have this is the customizer, right? And it's a really simple kind of UI that's on the left-hand side. If your developer built your theme to integrate like a video into this, you can really easily just either upload a video or put in some embed code there. But your theme has to support it. It's not something that like comes in core, or it's not something that like all themes have, right?
I'm not sure.
It's possible,
Yeah.
but your theme has to support it, right?
Okay, so I would have to do some coding, like you showing.
Yeah, for the most part. Like if you wanted to have a video show up at the top of your site,
Yeah.
You could do it a variety of different ways, right? And so my thoughts are sometimes like, let's keep it simple, right? That this whole KISS concept, and if we keep it simple, the simplest solution would be to put embed code actually in your template file and bypass all this kind of like UI stuff, right? But you might want to make it dynamic And if you want to make it dynamic, then you'd probably want to, you could reference some of the slides that I showed tonight.
Yeah.
And maybe I would probably work on adding in probably a text area. I'm not for sure how the text area would sanitize the actual embed code, but it's totally possible. Shoot me an email and I'll give you some resources. Yeah.
The image field.
Yeah.
The image setting. What does it return? Return the URL or the attachment ID?
I don't know. There's actually two different. There's an upload field which will return any kind of MIME type, right? But I think the image upload field is just for a single image, and I think it just returns. I don't know if it returns the attachment ID or if it returns the image source. It would make a lot of sense if it actually returned the well.
Can you use that for a video upload?
Yeah. I think it returns the source URL because with the slides approach, we had it return the attachment ID. This is all relevant because like with the attachment ID, you can do a lot more than you can if you just have the image source. Oh, I'm done. I guess my computer said I'm done. Any other questions though? Yeah. Either one. Let's go here first. Yeah.
Very elementary, but
Cool.
what's the difference of, I guess, using the customizer and just going through the settings in the dashboard?
Okay.
And customizing there?
So the question is, what's the difference between using the customizer versus going into your WordPress settings and making those changes? So the customizer is merely for your theme, right? And the settings panel, like if you go to your WordPress dashboard settings, those control like all of WordPress, right? It controls like how many posts show, how like what your site description is. There is some redundancy there because you notice that there is a site description inside the customizer, and there's also a site title in the customizer. Those get saved in the exact same place in the database. It's merely for kind of like enhancing the user experience, right? Like it puts all the changes that could affect the front end design of your website in one place that's easy for everybody to change. Yeah? Does that help? So they're the same. They're the same. Yeah, they're the same.
That was actually based on my question too.
Okay.
It's basically posting those options into another interface.
Yeah.
When you were setting the byline or the site title, those are setting the main WordPress options.
Yep.
You're just doing through the customizer.
Exactly. Yep.
It gets messy.
It does, and that's kind of why there's been a big movement to move a lot of the functionality into this customizer because it's nice, right? You actually get to see your changes as you make them, right? If we go and we check out, I don't know if we're going to be able to see this on this screen, but like with this typography, right? Like if I wanted to change all my site titles, I can do it right here on the page and I can see exactly what everything looks like, right? I mean, that's a horrible looking font, but who cares? We can do the same thing with colors, right? This is kind of pretty neat, right? It's a color picker that kind of like pulls in a color palette, and then from there you can go in and make like kind of minute changes, right? So it gives you, it enhances the user experience of WordPress, makes things easier to use. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm also sort of new to WordPress.
Okay.
So what I've done in the past is that I create a child theme.
Okay, that works.
And so what you would do here is that you wouldn't create a child theme, you just grab a theme that you like, and then use the customize it, and then those settings are saved in the database, so you don't have to worry about updates.
Yeah. So the question is, there is this thing in WordPress called child themes. Child themes can actually inherit the style of a parent theme, which is like your main theme, but it can actually override like colors and fonts, and it can really modify everything about your theme. His question was, should I use a child theme or should I use the customizer? Remember, the theme that you are using, it may or may not provides support for the customizer. The theme itself is the mechanism to which most of those options show up. So you want to choose a theme that, if you want to make if you want to make your life simple, you want to choose a theme that integrates with the customizer. So when you're looking, or shopping for themes or stuff like that, make sure that you're looking for a theme that integrates with the customizer. Otherwise, you can create a child theme and kind of do some of this stuff yourself.
When you're giving the user the option.
Excuse me?
You're giving the user the option to
Right.
make those changes, rather than the developer, which you have to create the child theme.
Yeah. So, if you're a more advanced user, you might consider making a child theme if you don't mind writing some code. Otherwise, you want to look for a theme that just integrates with the customizer. Yeah.
I'm a new user, so I hope this isn't a silly question.
Cool. No, they're all good questions.
I noticed that there are plugins that allow you to customize and change layout of the theme.
Okay.
Talk to those.
Yeah. So his question was, there are plugins that allow you to change the look of your theme. Is that right?
Change the number of columns, the panels,
Okay.
everything.
So when you think about your theme, I would think about it in 3 parts. You've got your header, you've got your kind of content container, and then you've got your footer. What you're talking about are plugins that allow you to kind of manipulate the data inside the content area, right?
Well, I could have change the number of panels.
Yep.
If you want to do one right, one left, or in the middle,
Yeah.
one around. Is that advisable to use that, or is that
For sure.
use bugs?
No, yeah, those are all. I mean, I would check the reviews, make sure that the plugin has a lot of high reviews, and if it does, and if it's relatively recently maintained, there's a new update for it. I would think it's a good plugin.
Are there any that you like in particular?
Yeah. There's one that's called. Why didn't somebody else maybe name a couple? I'm spacing out on the name.
All right. I thought maybe you just tell us.
Oh my gosh! I just was chatting with these guys the other day.
Can I send you an email?
Yeah, for sure.
Your email.
Yeah, it's info@graphpaperpress.com. Steve, the name of a grid kind of layout plugin. What's the one that Jakewith wrote? Like a like a page builder. What's the one that?
Oh, I don't.
What is it? No, not SiteWorks. Yeah, you could just Google page builder, or WordPress page builder on the WordPress plugin repository. I can't believe I forgot this. Yeah. Velocity page, I think, but that's actually a premium, it's a paid plugin, so I think that there's a couple free ones in the repository that you might be able to find, but you just want to search for page builder.
The reason I asked my question is I don't want to have to deal with buggy plugins.
Right.
So that's why I
Yeah.
asked you. You would know if
Velocity page is a top-notch plugin, but like I said, it's a paid plugin. There's another one, but I just can't remember what the name of it is. But the WordPress repo, send me an email and I'll give you a link.
But can I say one thing about plugins like that? Just do some research, because I haven't used one, but I'm guessing that once you start using it, you're locked into using it. So be very careful. Don't if you're going to find one. Like Velocity Page is written by Mark Jakewith. Mark Jakewith is one of the core developers of WordPress. He used to lead the security team, so it's pretty stable and secure and be around for a while. I'm sure there's others as well. Just be aware. There's certain plugins that you're going to install, and they're yours. And getting away from them afterwards is going to be a real pain. So just do your research.
It's a marriage. When you choose plugins, it's a marriage. And divorce, as you know, is ugly.
is there anything like Yelp or whatever that reviews these plugins that someone's done the research already?
WordPress.org has reviews on the side.
I looked at them. It's
Yeah, it's all over the board.
Is there any trusted source?
Email me or Steve. Personal recommendations are always good. Yeah.
How's this going to work for, you brought up an example of somebody who doesn't use the customizer. It's this massive admin panel for a customized theme that I bought on Theme Forest. Right?
Okay.
That's my landing page. what happens to outfits like that? They have to recode it so it works with this, or?
Yeah, so theme, well, I mean, if it's on ThemeForest, it's like the Wild West, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, nobody's really kind of, well, there are coding standards, I think, but they've gotten much better over the years, but I don't know if they're going to enforce it like they do on WordPress.org. If you get something from .org or another trusted source, you know, if it integrates with the customizer, you know that you're kind of future-proofing your site. You know that some of these changes, like if WordPress updates, like it's more than likely not gonna, you know, your welcome message won't like not show up, you know. So, plus it shows that whoever built your theme is like present and aware of like kind of contemporary best practices. So, yeah.
So I've seen themes that allow you to put custom CSS
Okay.
in the customizer.
Right.
Do you think it's easy to do and a good idea?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, we've done that in the past because it was an alternative solution as opposed to having customers like hack their theme. You can do it in a way you can sanitize that data, but you have to be very careful, right? Because you're actually letting people put in some characters that could possibly be used for malicious purposes. But WordPress or actually Automatic and .com support custom CSS in the customizer. So, and it's all sanitized the same way that a lot of theme developers do it too. So I would think you're okay. Any other questions? Everybody's hungry, right? I know I am. Pleasure speaking with you guys.